Okay, here we go. All right, let me pull up our participants here. Okay, looks like we are rolling and we're starting to see folks joining in. Welcome everybody. We're gonna give folks just a couple more seconds here to populate into the room. I see some familiar faces there. Eric, how are you doing? I see you. Linda. All right. Good. All right. We got a good number of folks joining us in. So, all right, let me make sure we are going live. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. We're going to give it one more second. Okay, we'll go ahead and kick this off. All right, there we go. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Josh McLean. I'm the president and broker at David Walters Yachts. Appreciate you guys tuning in today for our, this is our fourth webinar in our, let's call it the quarantine series. We've enjoyed doing these, and we've had a lot of great participation from clients and friends and folks around the industry. You know, we really wanted to try to give something that folks can tune into and engage with. I hope everybody is staying safe and in good health back home. So we figured these webinars were going to be a good way for us to be able to stay connected with our folks and share a little bit of knowledge and information, not only about the variety of boats that we represent, but also you know, some tips and advice for both buyers and sellers. So this webinar is going to be focused more or less on the from the perspective of the seller. We're going to talk a little bit about some considerations for selling a boat in times of uncertainty, certainly what we're going through today. And we're going to base a lot of our conversation today off some of the lessons learned and observations that we've made from, you know, sort of past times of uncertainty. So we'll talk a little bit about what occurred after September 11th during the financial crisis of 2008. And every situation being a little bit different, we're going to pick out a couple of trends and identify some points that, that we think will be relative and pertinent to today. So when we get this started, pardon me, I got some reverb. Oh, let's see. Let me try this. Okay, is that better?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, there we go. That was weird. I was talking to myself, hearing the echo. All right. Yeah, I know it, right? Exactly. Bernie, watch it. Okay, good. Technical difficulties out of the way. We're ready to get started. So for these guys joining in, you will see we do have the live chat going. So as we go through the webinar, feel free to jump in with your questions and your comments. We can stop, pause, revisit anything that the you know, our team has discussed. So we do want to try to make this sort of a two-way street here. So I see a lot of very familiar faces here. Bruce, Eric, Linda, Richard, Robert. I see a lot of folks that we recognize here. James, so thanks for joining in, guys. I do expect we'll probably have a good number of our sellers tuned in today. So with that, I want to just introduce who we've got here with us today. We'll start with our northernmost broker, John Cuny, tuning in from Maine. So John, you want to give a little introduction here and tell folks a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yes, thank you everyone for joining us today. As Josh said, I'm located up in Portland, Maine. Recently relocated back after spending 19 years out in California and representing a dealership out in Alameda, California, the Northern California market. Grew up sailing on the Great Lakes, started sailing when I was 6. Built a boat with my dad starting at 7, a 12-foot mahogany racing dinghy, and it gave me the bug. We started chartering boats on Lake Michigan when I was 9, and from there, I've been on the water ever since. So It's nice to be here. Glad that you're joining us, and hope you find today's information informative.
And then heading a little bit south there, we do have both Bernie and John Barbaro joining us from Annapolis. So Bernie, you want to give a little intro and tell folks a little bit about your background? And then John, we'll have you do the same, okay?
Surely. First of all, I have to say, hopefully everybody's healthy and sane in this very troubled time. But I think that the storm is passing, but it sure is a big load that definitely surprised us all. I come from a big commercial fishing engineering background. I was a commercial fisherman back in the 70s while I worked my way through getting a master's in aeronautical engineering. I've had a passion for the sea and sailing. I've sailed across the Pacific, across the Atlantic 6 times, and I've owned 9 incredible boats. It started with a little Catalina 27 in 1979, then into a West Sail, into a Norseman 447, into a Pacific Seacraft 34, into a Valiant 40, a Bristol Channel Cutter 28, a Holberg Rassy 53, and now a Valiant 42. I run the Annapolis office here with my team here, and I also run the Seattle office and the Santa Barbara office. I know what it takes to buy a boat, and I sure do know what it takes to sell a boat, figuring I've sold a lot of them. So I know the agony, the pain, the suffering, but also the joy. So welcome aboard, and if you need me, you can find me in Annapolis or anywhere. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Bernie. John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I took up sailing a long time ago, early 80s. A friend of mine taught me how to sail, and of all places, not where you would think. I took up sailing in Oklahoma, of all places, in Grand Lake, and went from there to buy a boat that needed a lot of renovation, and completely renovated that boat. And then I became more and more interested in it, and started chartering a variety of places. I've been to Tahiti, I've been to Greece, I've been to Italy, British Virgins. I've have a 100-ton license, and have skippered boats professionally as a delivery skipper, and also as a charter yacht captain. I've done both sail and power catamarans, both power and sail and catamarans, monohulls, trawlers, and just have developed a passion over the years. I was a service manager for the Hinckley Company. Also was a tech support person for a company that made about 3,000 parts and pieces for boats. And also the sensor business for a company called Airmar. So I've been in the yachting business in a variety of capacities, and enjoy selling boats.
Fantastic. You know, in total, we've got a lot of diverse backgrounds in our team. I think everyone kind of comes from a different walk of life. So we have a good spectrum of opinions and experiences. And it's our hope we can try to convey some of that information to you guys today. So as we jump into this, you know, as we were sort of putting together the outline, I wanted to highlight some of the topics that I thought would be relevant and important to the conversation. So, you know, this obviously, there was a situation that came on rather quickly in terms of the current situation with everybody sort of holed up at home. So what I can tell you is back in 2019, the market was pretty hot. It was one of the best years that the sailboat market has seen in a very long time. And very quickly, almost overnight, things sort of came to a little bit of a hopefully we say a temporary halt. So our best perspective on today's situation, we can really glean from what we've experienced in past times of uncertainty. So we're going to refer a lot back to what we encountered in the market back in 2008 and 2009. So I thought a good lead into the conversation today would be to highlight a little bit of what happened then in terms of the effect the financial crisis had on the overall yachting market. And we're going to gear the conversation largely towards the sailboat market, because that is most certainly where our specialization is. And I think most of our audience, that's probably more relevant. So, you know, overall, when we looked at the statistics and the analysis, and I've got a whole report together if anybody's interested in, I can send it to you after the webinar. But in general, the effect that we saw in the sailboat market during the 2008 crisis was overall, and most of this can probably be said to be somewhat obvious, but there was a decrease in sales an increase in the average time to sell, and an increase in the average percent negotiated between the buyer and the seller when it did come time for the sale to conclude. But that said, not every market segment was affected in the same manner. So if you look at the average number of sailboats sold, over the past, call it 10 years, there's been a noted decline in the number of sailboats sold. But if you wipe out the market that's under 40 feet, you'll actually find it's been fairly consistent for the past decade. In many cases, there's been significant growth, particularly in the larger sailboat market. So as we go through the conversation, we're going to try to break it up by market segment. And we're going to talk about under 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and 70 on up, because I think you have to sort of slice the pie up like that to get a full perspective. So overall, in the 2008 financial crisis, the number of sailboats sold in the under 40 market segment dropped by almost 35%, which was a significant portion of the overall total number of boats sold in the market. That percent decrease was also driven largely by the same proportional increase in the number of boats listed. So in that portion of time, within about a year and a half after the pit of that financial crisis, there was a large influx of boats on the market, and a significant decrease in the number of boats sold. And you saw that continue and have an effect in the years following that sort of that slump. So that is the under 40 market. There was a big decline there. We would expect to see something similar going into the current environment. Generally, those are going to be the boats that are going to be at the, I argue to say lower price point, but we're still talking in many instances boats that are $200,000. So what we would expect to see is a general decline in the smaller boat market, increase in the amount of boats on the market, decrease in the number of sales. If we're looking at boats in that 40 to 50 foot market, if you base it on the information that we saw from back in 2008, there was a decline in the number of sales, but it wasn't as significant. Interestingly enough, the number of boats sold actually remained fairly consistent. What does go counter to most folks' general perception of what the boating market experiences in a financial crisis is actually in the larger boat market. And we're going to dive a little bit more into this a little bit later, but in general, those boats in the 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and 70 foot up, the number of boats that were actually listed in the midst of these uncertain times actually remained fairly consistent to what was in the years prior. And the number of boats sold in some instances, particularly in the 60 to 70 and 70 foot up, actually there was an increase in the number of boats sold. So it's interesting to see the two sides of the spectrum and how the smaller boat market was really hit the hardest, and the larger boat market was, in general, actually saw an increase in the number of boats sold. So let me see here. I see a question just popped up here from Toby. Okay, Toby, good question. That's one I'm gonna make sure I address it here a little bit later, because that's gonna fall right in line with some of the conversations we're going to have. But I got you, Toby. We won't forget your question. So,
Josh, this may be a good time just to reiterate. Please, we want this to be an open dialogue. Please do submit questions, bring up points of clarification, anything that we can do during this webinar to make it as interactive as possible.
Exactly. Thanks, John. And you can bring up the chat function in Zoom here, and or there is the question and answer tool. In fact, I just saw another question here pop up. Okay, so please give numbers for the 50 to 60 foot and 60 foot and greater. That was from Linda. So, okay, Linda, I've got those facts right here. And Linda, I know we talked the other day. I'm going to send you the market analysis, the full analysis on this later, so you can get a little bit more granular, because I know your boat and I know the interest that you're going to have in the information. But for the 50 to 60 foot market, there was a overall, let's see here. So there was actually a fairly consistent number of boats that were listed. In the 50 to 60 foot market, there was about 35 boats listed prior to the financial crisis. and there was 37 boats listed in the midst of it. So there really wasn't, and we wouldn't expect much of a drop in the larger boat market. For the 60-foot to 70-foot market, there was 24 boats listed before and 22 boats listed after. So there really wasn't much of a drop before or after. I think you could probably draw a number of reasons for that. Generally speaking, the folks that are going to have the larger boats are going to, they have themselves fairly well protected against the financials. So, Linda, I'm going to send you the full analysis that we've put together here later. And if you want, we can have a full conversation on it later. So,
Josh, this is Bernie.
Yeah, Bernie.
Before I joined forces with David Walters about 3 years ago, I started with my partner, Kate, Rogue Wave Yacht Sales. So we started our business at the height of the .com in 1997, when the baby boomers had a lot of money to play with. So basically the first year, every boat I sold was $1 million plus, and it just went like hotcakes. Then during the 2008 crisis, it was more centered on just banking, making mistakes, and careless lending. What we have today is a completely different animal because it trickled across the whole entire globe on every walk of life, from the guy who makes 25 grand a year or the guy who makes 25 million a year. It is more of a homogenized disaster instead of just one small little segment of our market. Sure, our portfolios went up down about the same amount as it did in 2008. But I think the uncertainty that we're facing now as boat owners or looking for buyers for our boats is going to be uncertainty, because this is uncharted waters we're walking into. So I think that through my experience, having sold over 900 boats, which basically I think I have the record for the team, I've seen it. So in the 2008 crisis, yes, the people that had the boats in the 40-foot and under category were the ones that still had the kids in school, the daycare, the soccer teams. They felt a little rich and they wanted to have something besides their home. They wanted a weekend retreat. So when the crisis happened, they didn't need those boats. Mm-hmm. But now so the jobs are still stable. Nobody got laid off. Unemployment was still pretty good compared to the way it is right now. So even the people that own restaurants, the people that can afford boats, $250,000 boats, even higher, they're wondering about how tomorrow will look, not just in the next week, but next year. And as you know, airlines are not going to be flying as many people. People are going to keep their distance still for a while because it impacted so much. And this is the uncharted waters as representing buyers and sellers and calling ourselves professionals, which we are. It's going to take a completely different unknown landscape. So we have to have open minds now and use a lot of experience to make it happen for everyone.
Yeah, yep, you're exactly right. And I think in general, like we've talked about, and if you tuned in for our buyers seminar that we did last week, you're right. This is uncharted. This is unlike anything we've seen. So the parallels that we draw are largely based on, our best assessment of it. Yeah, exactly. So I think, you're right. Nobody really understands exactly. I think a big effect is going to be on the logistics side as well, because I know what we've seen, and for sellers in particular that we're working with now, there's just an inability for people to travel to see these boats. So, Howard here, I see Howard just asked, he posted a comment here, and I'll just read it out loud. So big difference this time versus the financial crisis in the total collapse of the chartering with the income stream. If you own a charter boat, having stopped completely across the board for at least the season, won't this cause a tremendous amount of low to middle boats that are in the fleet to come onto the market? So Howard, speaking to how this would affect the charter market and those boats coming out of the charter market to the brokerage market, absolutely. If you look at, one of the biggest pushes in the industry in the past few years has been buy a boat, turn it into a business, put it in the charter fleet. And now those boats and those businesses, those charter,
they're not making money.
They're not outputting anything. So I would absolutely expect to see an increase in the number of former charter boats, potentially even late model charter boats coming onto the brokerage market. And I think a lot of that will also depend on the arrangement they have with those individual charter fleets, because I know if you put a boat into that, there is oftentimes some form of time commitment or term commitment for those boats in the fleet. So
3 to 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, I don't want to dwell too much on stats and statistics because that'll make everybody's head spin. But just know if you are interested in it, I've got a product. I can email it to you afterwards. Just let me know in the comments section that you'd like me to send it to you, and I'll make sure you get that. So the bulk of this webinar, I really want to focus in on just a general conversation and thoughts and input from our panelists here. So we've outlined a couple of topics that we're going to touch on, but again, this is an open forum, so please post your questions. So with that, I want to just lead in here with letting John Cuny here up in Maine kind of lead into it with his opening thoughts, and then we'll bounce around to a couple of different topics. And panelists, feel free to feed off of John's comments and add your own input. So,
thanks, Josh. You know, in my opinion, if there is a time within the last number of years of ownership of your vessel to invest in it, this is it. We are going to have a very competitive marketplace, and it's going to be imperative that there are going to be a lot of people out shopping for deals. If you want to retain not only the potential buyers, but also the opportunity, you have to make sure that you have invested from a cosmetic and a mechanical standpoint in your boat to make your boat be the selection that everybody wants. Once you get beyond the question of whether or not you have the best boat, then price becomes somewhat secondary. I can tell you, I've been in the business, as I mentioned earlier, now almost 20 years. I was approached a number of years ago about listing a boat that I sort of pushed off until I saw it. And my wife tells me that as I was walking off the boat after viewing it, I called her and said, I found the boat we're going to go cruising on. I did not expect to purchase that boat. I theoretically paid over market price based on what that boat was and how it had been maintained and how it showed itself. So you will be finding buyers out there shopping. Whatever excuse they have to nickel and dime you, they will take advantage of. My recommendation to you is invest the money necessary to make your boat the cream of the crop.
John, you brought up a really good point. This is Bernie again. Let's just take one high-end boat, a Tazwell 49. We all know how well that is. Wonderful design, great construction by Ta-Shing. A powerful 3-stateroom World Voyager. The one who, everybody thinks that their boats, every owner, you can say, my boat is the best boat. Everybody's going to feel that way, just like their kids are the smartest and the cutest and the dogs are the most well-behaved. But, so, you know, a professional broker will look at this objectively, understanding the subjectivity, meaning the emotional side of an owner's perspective on their boat. All owners love their boats, and the ones that are not loved by their owners reflect that easily. You know, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see that. So it is condition and price. So let's say you have these 3 Tazwell 49s. One has teak decks and 2 don't have teak decks. The ones that, and they're all the same year. The one that doesn't have the teak deck is going to be more marketable right from the start. Then you got to say whose bilges are the cleanest, the engine lower hours, the new equipment. Every boat has a depreciation, then a slight decrease in a plateau. Then it's going to take a big nosedive unless it gets a facelift. This is a great time for a facelift, a tummy tuck, and a new wardrobe. Okay, so if you're serious and you know, we never would advise a seller to say, spend $1 and you're going to get 5 cents back on it. That's insane. But, you know, we would advise a seller to say, hey, you know, if you invest $1, you're going to get 75 cents back, because that is going to translate to your boat being more attractive in a time when a buyer will be very sensitive and they're going to scour and look for the best boat. Engine hours, sales, the age of the rigging, the running rigging. So the finer things that sells a boat is condition. Condition is what sells a boat. And then there's really 3 factors that sell boats. It's condition, price, and a combination of first 2. So, you know, you just look at that. If the condition is crappy and it's overpriced, the boat will sit there forever. So we have to advise our clients, the sellers, to be realistic and tell them the truth in reference to our expertise and bring the emotion side out of it, but still understanding it.
Consider what you invest in your boat on a monthly basis. And I would suggest that you project that in these times out 6 to 9 months. Think about that dollar amount and anticipate spending a large portion of that on getting your boat ready to sell, unless you are the rare individual that maintains their boat at a meticulous standard at all times. You will sell the boat sooner. The money that you have saved over the 6 to 9 months that it's sitting on the market, compounded by the fact that the longer the boat's on the market, the less attractive it is to your audience. You want that boat sold within 90 days if possible.
That's true. No boat holds its value. No boat holds its value. It doesn't stay flat. It's a constant depreciation.
Yeah,
and you got carrying costs constantly.
And I would say, you know, of course, that effect is only compounded in this current environment. You know, if you look at the boats that had sold historically in challenging times, they're the most realistically priced. They're in the best condition. They're marketed well, and they're represented professionally. And I think, you know, the effect of price and condition are only exacerbated in such a challenging market. So, you know, there is no doubt about it that in times like we're experiencing now, and then, you know, the cream of the crop sells, and those that are not, those are the boats that linger on the market. In fact, on average, the average time to sell over the 2008 financial crisis, and again, recognizing that's different times, but the average time to sell increased by almost 6 months. And I think we're going to see a similar effect this time around with those boats that are not properly prepared, are not priced appropriately and well represented. Those are the boats that we're going to see lingering on the market for some time now. And that has a ripple effect that's going to carry on and translate over the coming years. So,
Good. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, do you have, if you want to add on to that point, I've got a couple of questions that have been coming in.
I just want to add one thing. The one situation that is a bit different today is that of the production boat market, the number of new boats that are sitting in both manufacturer and dealer inventory are not anywhere near what they were in 2008, 2009. Mm-hmm. Just one manufacturer in particular, Beneteau, had 300 boats sitting on lots unaccounted for when the market crashed. That's just Beneteau. You had Jeanneau, you had Catalina, you had Hunter. I'm referring primarily to the production boats because those are the boats that dealers typically sit on inventory. Mm-hmm. And those boats had to get cleared out of inventory before we started to see a lot of activity on the brokerage boat end. Today, fortunately, nobody's been stocking boats to the numbers that they used to. And you will see more activity in the brokerage end sooner as a result.
I think people are evaluating boats now more online. They have the time. There's a lot of people that are just sitting at home, you know, waiting,
sure,
you know, for the right boat to come on the market. So, and they're evaluating boats side by side and looking at condition, looking at what engine hours are, what electronics package is on the boat, what the interior looks like. And they're evaluating it both side by side online and then coming to us. So boats that are in good shape are definitely, but there's still going to be the buyers who are looking for the fantastic deal. So there's I think definitely buyers that fall into one of those two categories.
Yeah.
My expertise tells me that it's going to be a buyer's market for a long, long time to come, where a lot of sellers will probably say, well, I'm going to wait until the climate changes and it's going to even out itself a little bit more. Those times are never going to be there, because what's going to happen is that the boats will depreciate in time. The carrying cost of maintenance, insurance, storage, and everything else that goes with it is going to go down. So if a person's serious about selling their boat, like John was saying, both Johns, fix your boat up, make it marketable, price it right, and it will sell.
Yep, I would agree. And I've got a couple of questions here I want to touch on. This first one is from Jocelyn, and she asks, and specifically this is for John and Bernie. I'm assuming we got two Johns, so I'll assume it was John Cuny because you two were both taking the lead there. So investing in the boat makes sense, but can you comment on the services industry? It's very difficult to get timely renovations, especially refits. Are these professionals just going to effectively die out? So I think, and I'll give a couple of points here that I would say we are going to see, and I've already seen it, either a consolidation of service companies or just simply an evaporation thereof. I think undoubtedly we are going to see the small mom and pop shops in the marine industry be greatly affected by a downturn if this turns out to be prolonged. So John and Bernie, you guys want to comment on that?
Yeah. Bernie, I'll follow up.
Okay, good. My take is this from just today and the last few days, what I have seen. The big marinas are owned usually by investors. Investors want to keep their returns coming in because they invested in the properties, the maintenance, the salaries of many, many employees. So one local large marina in the area has been sending out letters to their clients. Oh, we can do this for you. We can do that for you at $125 an hour. We can put the canvas on for you. We can take the shrink wrap off on you. We can polish it up for you. And, and so they're hungry. And those companies will be surviving, but they'll make the money, but they're going to break the bank on the boat owner. So my take is that if you really do want to survive and come out of this ahead of the curve with still having some money left over, doesn't matter how much you have, it's still a hole in the water you got to put money into. Find the small mom and pop places, and they're more negotiable now because they want to stay afloat. So if you do have a bottom job, epoxy bottom job, they're going to listen a little bit more than they have in the past because they want to survive. And it's going to take like a village, as the old saying goes in life, to make things happen. So I think that if you need work done, go away from the bigger companies and find a small mom and pops, and you'll probably get a better deal out of it tenfold.
I would also say, for any of you that store your boat somewhere in the winter, it may be a little bit late for this season right now, but get to know the guys that are working in the yard, get to know them well. Because believe me, when the weekend comes and they put in their 40 hours and they check out, they're not going home and playing baseball. These guys are out working on boats every weekend and not at $125 an hour. Now, you got to support the marine industry. There are certain things that only the yards can do or that can only happen through the services that a yard has to offer. But when you're talking about simple detailing, cleaning, getting some varnish on, getting the stainless polish, getting the hull buffed out, getting underneath the cushions and every floorboard to get the pet hair out or the lint or the dust or the mold, those services are readily available to you. Everybody's going to be hungry, and as the boatyards do come into these times, I'm seeing it up here, little by little, they're reducing staff. You've got hungry employees out there looking for work.
I think that the other thing to keep in mind too is that the brokers already know kind of some of
who these
best people. So, that's part of how a broker can assist is to point you in the right direction depending on what you need and where you're located. And even if the boat is not in an area where we are, we definitely have a network of people that can help us and assist in getting you in front of the right people.
That's right.
Yep. And this is also, I see Toby's question here. I told you, Toby, I'd get back to you. Toby's question, and it can apply to Jocelyn's as well, is so he says, right before the COVID-19 outbreak, we were considering one of the boats you have for sale, but need to have it trucked or shipped to Seattle. So if
I've done that many times already.
Yeah, I think we have Bernie. In fact,
Bernie's your man.
Bernie just sent his Valiant 42 out there last season, so Bernie would definitely be somebody good to connect with on that. But the question specifically is, what is happening right now in terms of trucking and shipping and availability and cost? So much related to Jocelyn's question, I think all across the board in the service industry, whether it's the guy painting the bottom or the guy loading the truck to ship it across the country. Everybody's hungry. Everybody's going to be looking for an opportunity to get a job. And I wouldn't expect much different from the transportation side of it.
That's correct.
So there's a lot of, there's a couple of big names in the transport industry, whether it be Seven Seas, Seven Stars, there's an endless list, exactly. But there's a lot of mom and pop shops as well that do a quality job at moving boats. So again, we can help point you in the right direction on the transport of the boats.
Josh, like a classic example is, I use Deep Water, which is a good, strong company. And I got a phone call last week from them, and they're saying they're looking for they had an empty load going back east.
Yeah.
Okay, and they were going to cut costs on that major time, because what happens is the truck had to get back east, so they would rather make a little than nothing. It's always better to make something than nothing. That's my life story. Okay, but I think that it is a time for negotiations, and there are people that are hungry. The marine industry generally are not people that have fat 401k plan portfolios. It is people that just love boats, and that's their passion, that's their profession. So yeah, they are all hungry. Classic example is I had a gentleman today, we launched a boat, and he needs engine work. I gave him a list of 3 mechanic businesses in town. And I said, negotiate with every one of them, because each one of them are starving, which they're gonna do. So the reality is a great time if you're smart enough to do so.
Most of these lockdowns for limited to businesses that provide essential services, most boatyards, because they are providing service work, are considered essential services. Now, it varies a little bit by state, but I can tell you that most of the boatyards up here in Maine, they're loading boats, for shipment. They're working on the boats. They may have a reduced staff. They may have a reduced number of hours, and they certainly have split shifts where people are, half their crew is working Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the other half Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. But there is activity there.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So I think in general, to summarize that point, the best boats on the market right now in terms of condition that are realistically priced, those are the boats that are going to be the first to sell. They're the boats that will not be lingering on the market. Now is the time to do that if you're considering selling your boat. The best chance to get a boat sold is in those initial few months when it's fresh and new on the market. And if there's any projects that are outstanding, now is definitely the time to get those done, not only from the marketability of your boat, but also the potential to negotiate with the service providers to get those projects done. So I want to move on to our next point here. I'm going down the list of our notes. In terms of, we talked a little bit about the marketability of the boat, but let's talk about what a seller in this environment may expect when it comes to the initial pricing. And then after the initial pricing, you put a deal together, what can the expectation be in terms of the percent negotiated at the point of sale? So I'll let one of you guys jump in on that. We'll talk pricing and negotiation in this environment.
Well, figuring I've sold a lot of my own boats, 9 of them already, and one was a Holberg Grassy 53. I know what it takes, selling a boat, and I know what it feels like losing a lot of money. I lost $400,000 in 4.5 years on a boat. So, I'm still crying over it. So what it takes right now is a seller to believe in the professional that they're hiring. Just like you're going to go to a doctor and you're going to have to trust what he tells you. People always think that what they have is better. It's worth so much. Yes, it is. To you, it is. I understand that. It's worth a lot. It's like, it's like seeing your dog die. I mean, like basically when you sell a boat, in reality wise, it's true, but look at this way, you're free after that and you don't have to buy dog food anymore. So selling a boat has its benefits. Okay. So it's true in that way. Okay. So what it actually means is like to price it. If you want to sell a boat and there's 6 of them available, my suggestion to you is to fix your boat up better than the other ones that are available and price it lower. Then at the same price as the lowest one, then your boat will sell. But if you price it, if there's 8 boats and they're all the same type of boats, the exact same models, if you're up there with the highest one, your boat will not sell. You'll have to, if you want to get rid of your boat, sell your boat at a price that will work. that will attract and look for a buyer. Buyers are sensitive, and it will be a buyer's market for a long time. That's my suggestion. Fix it up, price it low, and get rid of it. To have $300,000 in the bank is better than having a piece of fiberglass sitting on the land.
Yeah, I don't know that I would necessarily say price it low, but Bernie's point is well taken. The boat has to be, it has to be attractive from the time the buyer sees it on the website until they walk down the dock. You don't, at no point through the process of a buyer identifying a boat, speaking with a broker about the boat, walking down the dock, walking aboard, at no point in that process, even carrying through that of the surveyor going through and tearing the boat apart, do you want to have a buyer gain apprehension by something that they've seen? Okay, so if you've got a boat that that the boat looks beautiful, but all of your faucets and sink fittings have corrosion on them, replace the damn things, because there's corrosion there. Where else am I going to see corrosion? If your hinges are corroded, they're cheap, replace them. You know, go through the process to make your boat right and price it reasonably considering the times.
Yeah, and John, I would agree with you in that, and you know, I mean, I agree with Bernie as well here, but I think that, you know, from my perspective, I think the boat needs to be priced appropriate to its condition. You know, I always kind of try to break things down into 3 tiers. You've got top tier, middle tier, and your bottom tier boats. A top tier boat, in some cases, depending on its condition, its equipment, it can be a top tier price. But I think in a more challenging marketplace, you know, sellers need to be more aggressive with the price. So I'm not saying your top tier, hardly used boat that's been your baby since it was new needs to be priced as low as the one that's been beat up and sailed around the world. I think price needs to reflect the condition, but sellers need to be cognizant of the challenging marketplace and be a little bit more generous, quite frankly, with the listing prices than what we would have even 6 months ago. So that would be my take on it.
Ultimately, the buyers are going to dictate the market.
How true that is. That's right. They don't want to put the money.
It's only worth what people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, the tough part for a seller, I think, is the emotional part that they've got. They've hopefully had wonderful times on their boat. They've had wonderful experiences and adventures, and it's very hard to detach yourself from the emotion of getting rid of your baby, and as Bernie said, your dog.
You know that because
but
you
it's
have,
not
you
a
have
dog.
you have an old dog.
You know, I know in selling my own boats that it's very difficult because of the emotional attachment to the boat and the experiences you've had on those boats.
Yep, and we understand that because we're boat owners. I mean, we're there. We've been there, so we understand the agony.
I do want to point out that Bernie has never owned a dog.
Oh, yes, I did.
Did you?
Newfoundland. And
But he loved mine. He loves mine.
That Newfoundland was like huge. Okay, I need a snow shovel cleaning up the yard.
But so, you know, if you want to talk about the pricing as it relates into, you know, from an emotional standpoint, I think a good broker understands that there's a lot of emotions, both in the buyer and the seller's perspective when it comes to getting a boat sold. And a good broker should be respectful to that, but should also advise you from a standpoint of experience and knowledge and not emotion. And I know for a lot of sellers, that's very difficult. And I think I know I can speak from my experience, and I'm sure these our panelists here can as well, that we've all encountered a seller or a buyer that there's a lot of emotions wrapped up. And in some cases, I've seen it disrupt the deal that in all reality should have happened. And I know to really capitalize on that, there has to be a relationship and an element of trust with your broker to know that they're doing the appropriate job for you. And I think you can't talk about selling a boat without talking about the emotional side. And I think especially in times like now, that's more true than ever.
Hey, Josh, like a classic example. that life is always a give and take type of situation for everything in life. It's a give and take. So a classic example is, just recently I sold a Valiant 50 and the seller felt so beat up. The buyer felt he gave as much as possible. And the main halyard needed replacing. And the seller said, no, I've given enough. And the buyer said, well, I've given enough. I put a new halyard on the boat. So basically it's like a win situation for all parties involved to say, in this day and age, in this time, I think it's really fair that life is even keeled. We never want to see something list in life where we never want to see the seller get screwed, the buyer gets screwed, because if both people feel like they win, the brokerage firm wins then, and that's what we're all in business for. We're here to make sure that everybody wins in the equation. Brokers don't win until the buyer and the seller win.
That's right.
Or they both feel equally screwed.
Yeah. Dave Walters told me one time, he says, look, if the broker's pissed, the buyer's pissed, and the seller's pissed, it was
a perfect deal. It's a perfect deal. I know. And I said it differently. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so touching on that, and I know I let in with a little bit of stats and statistics on the market, but one of the things that I would fully expect to see in this environment is an increase in the amount of negotiation that happens between the list price and the sales price. I think it is almost a certainty that we're going to see a greater percent of negotiation now than we did last year. And going a little bit back to the stats without getting too far into it, historically, and I think everybody knows the rule of thumb. Generally, you can get about 10% off the list price, and that's what the sale price is going to be. In 2008, that average has been fairly consistent, by the way, for the past 10 years. It's generally about 10%. In 2008, that actually went up to about 15%. So there was more of a necessity to negotiate, to make those deals happen. And I think you can't talk negotiations without also talking the list price, because clearly a boat that is aggressively priced isn't going to have that same level of negotiation, or shouldn't theoretically. But just talking averages, there's going to be an increased expectation that buyers and sellers are going to negotiate.
And you got to be careful with that also, because that can then create a mindset in the seller's mind by saying, wow, I'm going to expect a 20% negotiation. I'll just raise the price 20%. It doesn't work like that. Okay. So basically the reality is, in this day and age, the seller needs to be realistic. And if they want their boat sold, price it according to what the market will bear for that boat. And have, like John said, have the best boat on the market, price it aggressively, and let your skilled broker do the job for you. We're here to fight for you. We're here to make it happen.
Exactly.
Okay?
So, all right.
And like, the more money you make, the more money we make. That's reality.
Yep. All right. So we've got a couple of questions that have come in here. I want to make sure we get to them. Let's see. So Linda, I'll send you the market analysis, and I had another gentleman here. I'll send that as well. Okay. So let me jump into this one here. This one was related to insurance. Let me pull that up. Okay. All right. So the question is, in short, how, or do we expect there to be any greater of a challenge from an insurance perspective for sellers given today's environment? And I've actually just recently had a conversation with a couple of the folks that we work with in the insurance industry. Anybody who has Pantanius, I'll bet you probably just received your cancellation notice. There is definitely a shakeup in the insurance industry. I don't know that it's particularly tied solely to this current environment. I think it's probably too early in this current time of uncertainty to make any judgment whether this is going to affect the industry. But I can tell you the last couple of years from the storm season certainly has. Many insurance companies have tightened their belts or just simply said, we're not going to mess around with blowboats anymore. Pantanius being one of them. We've had to shuffle around and help quite a number of clients with the insurance spectrum fairly recently. So a good broker is going to be able to get you some good contacts for the insurance. So if anybody out there has had that cancellation notice come, shoot us an email later and we'll share some contacts with you for the insurance side of things. So any of you guys want to jump on that?
Yeah, just one other thing that affected us last year, for those of you that may have a policy presently that's underwritten by Lloyd's. Lloyd's has stopped writing insurance in the United States as of last September. I think September 23rd was when my policy expired. So just be cognizant of it. If you have a Lloyd's policy and you haven't been notified of a cancellation, it's likely upcoming.
So through my experience, what I did, like, I have my Valiant 42 and I have insured for $450,000. I sailed a boat from Nova Scotia down to the Caribbean already. She's a 2009. I had Merkel through a brokerage firm here in town, and I was paying $3,400, and I have a captain's license, and I've been doing this for 40 years with no claims. So I switched, then I took the boat out to Seattle, Washington. I was paying $3,400 on the East Coast, the entire East Coast. Now I can take it from Homer, Alaska down to Mexico for $1,400 through Geico for the same amount. So shop around, don't overinsure. And if you're not going to plan to leave your local waters, and let's just say Chesapeake Bay or anything north of Hatteras, don't insure it for south of Hatteras. Be smart in your expectations. Just put riders on it and shop around. I've found that Geico right now, the Boat US is a deal and a half. It's definitely the best coverage you can get.
Agree.
Yeah.
I've had Geico and had no problem with them, and they were reasonably priced.
I mean, $1,300 from Homer, Alaska, all the way down to Mexico. You
pay attention, read the fine print there. I can't speak for Geico specifically, but there certainly are insurance carriers that do not have a robust marine insurance policy. You can write your sailboat, your 50-foot sailboat through Allstate if you want to, but if you experience a claim, you're going to find that there are a lot of things that see depreciation that you won't find in a true marine grade policy.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think in general, don't buy your policy from just from the duck or the llama or whatever they are on the commercials. You know what I'm talking about? If I see duck selling insurance, I'm going to scream. But I think Bernie is right there. I've seen, and I've actually had probably 4 of my clients recently get the cancellation notice from Pantanius, and they all went to a Geico policy. So I would say every situation is different, but Geico right now I know has some pretty good policies. But to John's point as well, absolutely read the fine print, particularly for those that are in the hurricane belt. I know the question that was proposed here was largely touching on the policies for the Caribbean. It's definitely more difficult to find good coverage in the hurricane belt during the storm season. So, but Geico I know will. So check out Geico. Let us know. We can put you in other contacts as well.
Morgan Wells or Jack Martin is the guy you want to get in touch with. Morgan Wells.
Yep. So send us a note if you need help with the insurance. We'll be happy to point you in the right direction here. So, okay. All right, I want to see here. Let's see here. Jamie, I'm going to send you my market analysis. I got your note there. So Linda's got a question. I think this is a good segue into our next point. And any seller who's ever picked up the phone and gotten and got me on the line, you've heard me say this before. But Bernie mentioned that from his perspective of it, there's 2 points to get the boat sold. I agree, the price, the condition, but I'm also going to say you need to consider the marketing and the location. So, because I always say there's 4 points to getting a boat sold: price, condition, location, and marketing. So the price and the condition we just talked about. The marketing is largely, I would say, just as important as price and condition. I think if you're off the mark with either price, condition, location, or marketing, you're setting yourself up for failure. So what does a real marketing strategy look like, and how do we approach that? So I think the first conversation that happens is, anytime I know, and I can speak from our experience, from our team, the development of that strategy starts with making that initial phone call, and building a relationship with the broker that's founded on trust, backed up by knowledge and experience. So I think you can't put forward an effective strategy if you don't trust your broker. So I think shop around. I would encourage you, shop around, talk to brokers, find the one that you build a connection with. We all, even the four of us on this call today, we all have four different styles. I personally like to think that, of course, at Dave Walters Yachts, regardless of the broker you work with, you're going to get a good product, but it's every broker's
going to get integrity.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that is absolutely critical. So build the relationship, know that you can trust them. And then once you feel comfortable, then start working on the strategy. So obviously I think we need to evaluate the condition of the boat. A good broker is going to give you honest and sometimes hard feedback on the deficiencies of the boat from their perspective that's derived from their experience of working with buyers. There is, of course, a balance between projects that should be undertaken and projects that should be left for the next owner. And it's sort of a cost-benefit analysis there. So we'll outline the deficiencies of the boat, the projects to undertake. We'll translate that into an appropriate asking price, and not just what we'll put the boat up online for, but I always like to approach it with a genuine strategy. So we would start with, here's what we're going to list the boat for. If we're not seeing the desired effect, 4 months from now, we're going to revisit this and we will drop the price to this if we don't see the activity. And come fall, we're going to do this with the pricing. So it's not just what's the sticker price we're going to put on the boat and then you forget about it. You have to take a holistic view and come up with a strategy that says, when we list the boat, we're going to put it for here. If we don't see any activity at X amount of time, we're going to drop the price to this. And then we're going to drop it to this if we still don't. So you need to have some structure to that. And a good broker will outline that for you.
The other thing too is that you can support that with web hits. So we do have that data available to share with our clients.
Exactly. And I'm going to touch on that in a second, because that's more of the reporting side of it. You can't be successful with anything that you can't measure. So we try to back up everything that we propose with some form of data and information to help support our point. So the pricing strategy, I think, is essential. In addition to the pricing, you also have to consider the marketing strategy, because a good boat priced right and in beautiful condition, if it's not reaching the right audience, it's never going to sell. So I know our pricing or our marketing strategy involves a variety of different marketing channels. Obviously, we all know Yacht World. That's where about 50% of buyer leads come from, is Yacht World. I would say about a third are generated either from our website or some of the events that we host. Are more or less our outreach. And then, that last portion there is brokers' efforts, their network, their ability to meet folks on the dock, shake hands, walk-in clients, that sort of thing. So our marketing strategy, of course, involves Yacht World. We do a lot of enhanced listings. They show up nice and bold. The listing write-up itself is absolutely critical. It is shameful to look at some of the listing write-ups that are out there on the market today. A listing write-up should be descriptive. It should be entertaining to read. It should be well organized. It should be a mix between telling the story of the boat, the benefits, and the technical details. And it's a challenge to write a good listing write-up. I will say, and I'm going to brag on you here, Bernie, but Bernie writes some of the best listing write-ups I've ever seen. They're entertaining to read, and they're factual, and they tell a good story. So I've modeled my listing write-ups after what you did and what Dave did as well.
Rich did that too. He copied it.
But the listing write-ups, they are key, and you have to consider that, because the listing write-up also translates into marketing material. So, we are really involved with obviously the social media, the videos, drone shoots, high quality photos. The overall presentation of the boat is absolutely critical. If the boat is not presented attractively to a buyer, it's never going to, if it doesn't look good on paper, it's not going to look good well, it'll look good in person, but it's got to look good on paper to get them to that point.
So sometimes my analogy would be like, even a crappy meal on a nice dining room table with nice silverware could be good. Okay.
So, all right, continuing on with the marketing strategy. So the price, the condition, of course, the marketing side of it, the listing write-up. So we do a lot of events. We host our own brokerage boat show in Annapolis, which is one of the only brokerage shows in town during the big boat show. Yep. So the events, the involvement, and a lot of it also relates to just our brokers' general involvement in things. So Linda, I would say it's understanding the market, it's understanding pricing, working the effective feedback with the seller to make sure their boat's prepped in the right condition. We also use a lot of data in terms of our involvement with our website, Yacht World, of course, social media, and our events. So if you want, Linda, I'd be happy to send you an example of what our actual marketing plan looks like, and we can talk about it in greater detail, because every single approach is customized and tailored to the specific boat. So anybody want to jump in and give a little bit of feedback on terms of developing a marketing strategy? Because every broker is going to do it slightly different. What I described is my approach.
I think that sometimes you actually wind up having buyers that are looking for a particular boat, and we're sharing that information with other brokers. If you see something that comes up on the market, let us know. We're looking for this particular boat, and we get first crack at it, if you will. So
the other thing, all of us that have been in the industry for some time have a very broad network of people that we've worked with throughout the country, and in some cases throughout the world. So one of the things that has been beneficial for me is, as soon as I have a listing go live, in addition to it going up on Yacht World and being on our website, et cetera, is it goes out to 350 brokers that I've worked with over the years. I find a lot of business coming through that. Be a little bit cautious of a broker that only wants to sell what he has available.
Yes.
If you're going to work with a broker to look out for your benefit, you don't want to work with a broker that uses help me out, Josh, not exclusive listings. What's the other?
Open.
Well, no, not available for co-brokerage. A lot of people want to say, all right, I'm not going to make my boat available for co-brokerage. Hell, every boat we list is available for co-brokerage, and we want to get that word out to as broad an audience as possible.
Yeah, John, I think that is a really, really good point. And oftentimes I've found that, we're not going to say names or anything like that, but I'll tell you, there are brokerage companies out there that their listings, as they're presented to brokers, are tagged as not available for co-brokerage, which is a huge disservice to the client, because essentially what that's saying is, I'm representing your boat, and I'm not going to work with any brokers that have a buyer out there for this boat. I'm going to close the door to that. And that is, to me, that's one of the biggest issues in the industry, is the not available for co-brokerage. Now, I understand there are instances where that is applicable, such as for trade vessels, or when there are unique situations to where that does apply. But 99% of the time, a boat should be available for co-brokerage. And if you're going to work with a broker, make sure you specify that you want this listing set up as co-brokerage. So, okay. So I see one of the questions here. So for showings, do you find there is any difference with the boat being on the hard or in a slip in the water? So
Well, I'd like to talk about that because figuring that when I first started Rogue Wave, I monopolized and got a football size area across from the office now that Josh is totally responsible for. Thank you for that. Okay. But what's really nice is coming from an aerospace mechanical engineering background and understanding underbodies, keel configurations, it's really a great thing to show somebody the whole boat, not just the stuff that you see above the water. That's like, only showing the front side of a person. You got a backside too, So basically, which is really true. So I think that it's much more of a success to be able to explain the flat sections of the boat, what a flat section will do when you go into weather. A flat section of the boat will create lift or pounding. A deep voluminous V will be a much smoother ride. A bolt-on keel compared to an internal lead ballast. The rudder configuration. There's so many different factors. So I think it's better off to have a boat on the hard than in the water.
Okay.
Because,
So what I would say to that is, and Bernie, I respect the points that you're making. In my mind, they're going to see that when it comes out of the water for survey. However, but most often when a boat's on the hard, it's been stripped for the winter, right? It's most of the things that go with that boat that make it presentable aren't there. So I think it depends upon the buyer and what they can envision.
I think it's a little bit difficult for some people who might be interested in a sailboat or any boat for that matter to get up a ladder. It depends on the buyer.
if you can't get up the ladder, you can't go down the companionway.
That's true, but tell that to the buyer.
Oh, you are ruthless.
The truth gets you further in life.
Yeah. And Bernie doesn't really have much of a filter if anybody has never met him. So, all right, so my take on that, on the hard versus in the water. So looking at it from a different point of view, on the hard is going to be less expensive than in the water. In general, I mean, and I'm talking about your monthly cost for keeping the boat. Now, there is a whole other spectrum to that as well, where if the boat's on the hard, many marinas are going to require you to remove the sails. You're going to have to deal with the winterization, the enclosure of the boat during the winter time. So it's of course situational dependent, but I think, to John's point, a boat in the water shows more beautifully than on the hard. There's no doubt about it. When you walk up to a Morris in the water and you see the sheer, that's going to get somebody every time. To Bernie's point, there is an absolute benefit to being able to take a buyer up to a boat, show them the shape of the hull, the form of the lines, and describe to them in detail where they can get up and touch and feel how that boat was designed. You can't do that in the water as easy. You can do it off of drawings and explanation, but to be able to see a boat on the hard, you get more of a sense for the quality of the underbody and how that boat's going to sail. So I think there's merit to both. I think it's situational dependent. I think
the other thing is, if it's in the water and the client loves the boat and I get an acceptance, we can go sailing.
That's right.
Afternoon or the next day.
That's right, and that is a
moving along.
Yeah. So I think it's situation dependent. I think you can put pros and cons in either column. So, and I think it depends on location as well. You're not going to be able to put a boat on the hard in Fort Lauderdale. There's just not the space for it, or it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. In Annapolis, we've got a beautiful setup with boats on the hard, and we've got a full dedicated marina right there at our disposal. And then I know up in Maine, you've got a similar situation. So depends on
between $1,000 a month slip compared to $300 on the hard. And somebody who's selling a boat, I would rather tell them to take that $700 and fix their boat up.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So, all right. I think that was
5,000.
Yeah, that was a good question. All right. Let me see here. All right. So I want to talk a little bit, and one of the points that we've got here is talking about the variety of different buyers that we're likely to encounter in a more of a challenging market like we anticipate. And John Barbaro touched on it briefly here. Not every buyer is going to approach the situation in the same way. I think you're definitely going to see some folks come into this with the attitude of, I'm going to get a deal. I'm looking for the fire sale. You know, Bernie's got a little bit of a choice word. He's like to say bottom feeder. But you know, and I think there is some validity to that. There will be deals that are just smoking deals. Buyers do know that, and to some sense, they expect that. So I think you're going to see some sense in the buyers that they know they can get a better deal now than they could have a year ago. And you're going to see some folks at the extreme end of that spectrum who are going to be throwing around lowball offers.
Right. You're never going to get 50% off. You're never going to get 50% off. That ain't happening. Okay.
Exactly. And we all know, both from the seller's perspective and the broker's perspective, that those are the most challenging individuals to try to put a deal together with, because if you are respectful in the opening offer, it's going to have so much more weight when it comes to the negotiations. My advice to buyers is always put in you know what you would consider to be your best offer up front, so we can communicate that to the seller, and the seller should perceive that just by the quality of the offer. So it drives me crazy when you see a low ball offer come in, because it's just an uphill battle for both parties along the way. And about 50% of the time, it never works out. So sellers understand, and you know, our obligation as brokers is to present the offer. A good broker is going to be able to tell you that this is a low offer, and they'll advise the right approach. But I think the best negotiations are founded in quite frankly, respect, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Right. And I think that there's buyers out there, though, that are willing to do their own work, that are willing to buy a boat that's in reasonably good shape, that are interested in a project. Not that we're talking about a project boat, but are willing to do electronic upgrades and buy a boat that's you know, may need a little bit of cosmetic work. So you're going to have those buyers, and then you're going to have those buyers that are going to want pretty much a turnkey. It smells good, it looks good, it works good, and they're expecting to just get on it and sail away.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that element of buyer, that's always been there, and I think that always will be. You're always going to have the buyer that is just looking to they want to get into a boat, they want it to be ready to go, and they want to go off cruising. I don't think that individual is ever going away, regardless of what the market situation looks like. I think we just sort of see the spectrum of buyers sort of expand in one way or the other. You see you see Bernie says the bottom feeders come out, and then at the other side of the spectrum, you see the guys that say, you know what, life's hard right now, things are uncertain. The best place I want to be is on my own boat. And so that's, I think, if you look at the larger market, the larger yachts, you know, 50, 60, 70-foot boats. If you look back from the last financial crisis, that was one of the best markets. Boats were selling, and I think we're going to see the same. You're going to see a whole level of buyers out there that say, you know, life is short. I want to get into this, and I'm not going to waste any more time. Bernie actually just wrote a really, really incredible piece that we've got up on our website right now. And it's an article that he wrote. We're going to put it out in our newsletter next week, but it talks specifically to, look, life is short, buy a boat, sail away. We know things are hard, but do it. Because if you don't do it now, when will you? So I think you're going to see the bottom feeders. You're going to see the folks that John's describing, which are ready to go. And then you're going to see the folks that should say, life's short, let's do this.
Good. So Josh, last week I got this offer from this gentleman in the UK, and it was at 50% below asking price. And I said, it's not going to work. You're not going to, the seller will be not really happy, but I had to present the offer. So of course the seller comes back with beautiful verbiage explaining to tell this guy to go bye-bye. Okay. So of course I cut and pasted it and sent it back to the so-called buyer. Okay. And of course the buyer gets back in touch with me and said, I can't believe you said that. I said, I told you so. Okay. So he used very, like, you know, not nice words to tell the guy to go pack sand.
Yeah.
So that was a bad start for the guy. So he would never, the seller would never want to negotiate with a person of that magnitude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
exactly.
So it's our job. Yep. So it's our job to really make it happen.
Yeah. And, you know, from the seller's perspective, a good broker is going to come in and give you the proper guidance. And inherently, especially in challenging times, there are going to be lowball offers. We're going to see offers that are coming in that are 25% below the listing price. As a seller, have a little patience, trust your broker. He or she's going to do the best they can to navigate through that negotiations to try to give things the greatest outcome. On the same point, and we saw it historically, as a seller, there is going to be an increased expectation on the buyer's side that you're going to be more willing to negotiate, because we know it's more of a buyer's market now than it was a year ago. So I think there's a couple of points to be made there. Yep. Let's see. Jocelyn just sent us a question here. I'm going to read that. When we were buying our boat, we found that the brokers were resistant to presenting verbal offers to kick off negotiations first. Only a written offer. Do you see that changing to move negotiations faster?
No. Verbal offers is just hot air.
Yeah.
Okay. Put your money where your mouth is, in plain English. Verbal offers is absolutely totally. It's a pain. It's a waste of time. If you're serious, then be serious and stop jerking around.
When I was in California, California and Florida are the only two states in the United States that require licensing. And California, based on everything else that I've seen since I've left, seems to be as stringent as any place that exists. We could not even discuss a boat, not even mention that it was coming on the market if we didn't have a listing agreement on it. We could not present an offer without a 10% deposit in our trust account. We could not present a counter offer without it being signed. I know that for many people that I've encountered that aren't accustomed to these stringent requirements, it seems like a pain in the ass, but I'm telling you from my experience, it was absolutely beneficial in driving deals to closure, because people had to make a financial and a written commitment as to what their actions would be.
Right.
And it kept everybody on the same page, and there was no fluff and there were no games played.
And the seller will consider the offer a lot easier when there's money on the table and everything's written down in a formal YABA contract.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
I think it protects the broker too, because he said, she said, that comes into play. We don't want to do that.
Good point. Yeah.
So, and I know that, would verbal offers move things faster? Well, I think if we look at the consideration and the end goal is to put a deal together, I think the objective isn't necessarily to push the negotiations faster, but it's to make them more effective. And I think there's something psychological about sending somebody a sheet of paper that's got the numbers and a signature on it that says this individual is serious, and it alleviates any gray area or unknowns. So I think, in terms of an offer on a purchase and sales agreement is more than just the purchase price. There's contingencies, there's deadlines, there's timelines, and that is all a factor in the offer. It's more than just the dollar amount. It's also the contingencies. Is there financing? Is there some off-the-wall request that the buyer has that the seller is going to object to? Is the closing date projected to be 3 months from now? So
can you buy anything? Can you buy anything in any business? If it's airplanes, furniture, cars, any type of business relationship, nothing's verbal. Okay, it's like, come on.
Yeah,
I mean, like, even if you buy a dog or anything, like, you got to sign a paper. I want to buy this thing. Okay, I want adoption papers. You have to. There's a strict structure of success to make the transaction 100% real for all parties involved. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Bernie, that's I think, and I've been counting. I think that's the 4th time you've mentioned about getting a dog or having.
I know. I was just thinking the same thing.
I think
lonely. In fact, what's really interesting, New York Times had an article just recently about this isolation, that every dog shelter is running out of dogs because people are lonely. Okay? So it's like
the animals, the cats, the pigs, everything.
And you got 2 of them, Josh. Where are they?
That's right. So,
So
All right.
one other quick thing though, before we go, is it nowadays it's so easy with e-sign to do an offer.
Sure, you can do it digitally.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not like you got to meet in an office.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, all right, Robert's got a good question. And, I actually, I blame myself because I glossed over this in my conversation on my 4 points. We talked about price, condition, marketing. I told you there was a fourth point, location. So Robert jumped in and made sure I touched on this. So his question is, are you going to address the location where the boat is offered? And let me elaborate on that. And how does that affect the marketability and the sale of the boat? So location is absolutely critical. And not all boats, not all makes and models will do well in any particular location. I've got a good example that highlights that. Is a number of years back, we had a Morris for sale. We had it for sale down here in Fort Lauderdale. Beautiful boat, excellent condition, priced right. We could not move that boat to save our life. The seller was frustrated. There was no reason that boat shouldn't have been hot on the market. Initially we wanted to move the boat up north. The seller objected because he lived down here. We moved the boat up to New England, where Morris is renowned, and we had an offer on the boat in a week. So location is key, and there is a particular market for each particular boat. And I think in terms of the marketing and approach to getting a boat sold, the location matters. If you look on the East Coast of the U.S., we've got our offices. We've got John up in Maine. We got John Osatek in New England, Rhode Island. We got our office in Annapolis with Bernie and the team, John. We've got myself and my team down here in Fort Lauderdale, George over in Naples, and then we've got Dave Powers out in California. And Bernie does some business in Seattle as well. So we've got all the major markets covered. On the East Coast of the U.S., you'll find that's about 75% of the sales in the U.S. in terms of the sailboat market and boating market in general occur on the East Coast of the U.S. The West Coast is a smaller portion of that, and it's a different style of boat as well on the West Coast. And John in particular, John Cuny here can talk to you a lot about what it was like on the West Coast because he spent a lot of time in California. But my point is, on the East Coast in particular, there's three primary markets. You've got sort of New England and the main market where John's at. Then you've got the Mid-Atlantic, which is centered around really Annapolis. And then you've got, Fort Lauderdale, Miami. So the boats in those three markets are going to receive about 90% of all the interest out there. If you're a buyer and you're going to go looking for a boat and you've got your short list in front of you, or maybe it's 20 miles long, the first place you're going to stop is either going to be Fort Lauderdale, Annapolis, or Newport, Rhode Island. If your boat is in one of those three locations, it's going to be one of the first that people see. If the boat is sitting in Hampton, Virginia, it's a great spot to keep a boat, but it's not a great spot to sell one. So location does matter.
So my take on this, having done this for the last 23 years now, let's say Oriental, North Carolina, middle of nowhere. It takes forever to get there. You can't fly there. It takes you hours and days to drive there. The same exact boat in the same exact condition will sell for 15% less in Oriental, okay, as it would in Annapolis, Maryland, for the seller's point of view, okay? Basically, yeah, so they don't want to just drive there. I mean, it's just very difficult, and they're only going to go there for one boat. So you already have to have them reeled in. So it's very difficult to sell a boat in an isolated place like Wilmington or places like, where is it, first of all? You have to get Google Earth to find it, Okay. Yep. So Annapolis is the place, because when you take them shopping in Annapolis, they can look at 10 boats.
Bernie says that in part because, he's the king of the Annapolis.
He's there.
I am. I own Annapolis. Yeah. I have utmost authority, okay? Complete control in Annapolis, yeah.
Oh, he's either the king or the joker. We don't quite know which one.
It varies by the moment.
That's right. So, let's see, John Barbaro, you have a point you wanted to make on the location?
No, I mean, I think we've hit it. I have a listing, for instance, in New Bern, and it's a great boat, but it's in the wrong place. As Bernie pointed out, you've got to drive and drive and drive to get to go see one boat when you can see maybe 3 of that particular model, or at least something similar in Annapolis, where you can, and then you have some choices. So people's time is valuable, and I think location is definitely a big thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to shoot out a question here to the folks that are tuning in, because I am curious. I'm curious, and you can just, if you want to respond, just put your comment here in the chat section. But I'd like to know who has a boat currently, and is it currently for sale? I'd like to just kind of gauge our audience a little bit, and so that afterwards we can make sure that we're giving you guys the right follow up. But if you want to share in the comment section, just let us know if you got a boat for sale. Tell us a little bit about what it is and if it's currently for sale. So I do want to kind of move to the topic of how the broker can be effective, especially as it relates to the current environment. So I want to just kind of go around the table here, and I'm going to go from left to right on my screen because I got Bernie. You're up first. If you want to just talk about your opinions on what qualities should a seller expect out of a broker, and how can a good broker affect the sale of a boat in a challenging market?
The most important critical factor in anything in life is trust. Just a week and a half ago, I was in Brunswick, Georgia, and this aging couple asked me to represent them in the sale of their boat, which I'm delighted to do, which I love because it's a blue water boat. Somebody can get into something really nice. They had an insurance survey, and the insurance survey said the boat was worth $475,000. And I read the survey, I looked at it, I looked at the boat, and I said, what is this surveyor doing? What is he smoking? Okay? And so basically, like, the insurance survey was twice as much money as the boat is worth. So the people trusted me in saying, yes, okay, what do you think this boat will take to sell? I gave them a number and they believed me. So basically, I think the most important thing is you have to have a love affair with everything in life to succeed. And even if it's a yacht broker, we're not car salesmen. Trust your yacht broker. Mm-hmm. And if you do, you're going to get really far. You're going to get to the same goal. And my goal is to serve my clients, sellers or buyers, first and foremost. And I always say fiduciary responsibilities is critical in our business. So that's really the key to it.
Good. And I want to highlight something real quick. These guys I've got here today, they've been doing this for a long time. So you've got a variety of different qualities, a variety of different styles, and a lot of different backgrounds. I mean, I could point to each 3 of these gentlemen or any member of our team. And they all have a unique skill set. So I think it's a matter of finding a broker that you know and that you trust and that gets along with you on a good level. Because at the end of the day, selling boats is all about the relationship, whether it's with the buyer or the seller. So
I just see a check that came up with Mike. Mike bought a Valiant 40 for me, and he sailed all over the South Pacific and the Caribbean. Hi, Mike. Okay.
All right. So John Cuny, you want to give a little bit of perspective on your take?
Yeah, certainly integrity has to be there. And what I would recommend to anyone buying or selling a boat, before you get too deeply involved, interview brokers. Josh mentioned this earlier, but I would be much more comfortable with us entering a relationship if I were to give you a list or you were to query my website and speak with 5 or 6 people that I've done business with. I can tell you that I'm wonderful, but I would prefer to have firsthand knowledge imparted to you from people that have had the experience, because our customers are a testament. Bernie sold 900 boats. I've sold 450 boats. I mean, there's a reason why we've been successful in the business. There's a reason why David Walters Yachts has been so successful, and those of us that have had a strong career of our own have chosen to team up. You know, I had the great privilege of doing some business with Josh a number of years ago, and I was impressed that he was one of the stand-up guys. There are a lot of people in this industry that are doing it on a part-time basis or doing it from the perspective of something to do because their wives now would like to get them the hell out of the house. You know, I mean, there are many different motivations for why people are in this industry, and there are a lot of people that, you know, are interested in helping you out if you walk down the dock and they have the boat for you. I don't think you'll find that the focus of the people within the David Walters Yachts organization to be of that ilk. We see assisting our clients as a responsibility and to be a consultant to our clients. And our objective is for you to tell every one of the friends that you have in the yachting industry that you've never had a more pleasurable purchase experience.
Yeah, and you know, John, you hit the nail on the head there, and I appreciate you saying that. I know when we brought folks on board to represent Dave Walters Yachts and our clients, the first thing we evaluated was everyone's personality, and I think you'll find a very common thread about the folks on our team. But I also would say, look, I'm the president of the company, and I would tell you, call our competition, give them a call, talk to any broker that you can pick up a phone and call, interview them, talk to them. And look, at the end of the day, I know selling a boat is based on the relationship and your connection with that broker. If you find a better connection with another broker, then my advice, go with them. But do the footwork, do the groundwork, and find a broker that you connect with, that you feel comfortable with. And I would tell you, yeah, absolutely, call around. I hope you give us a call, and you know, that we earn that business and your respect and trust. But shop around. There's a lot of brokers out there, a lot of variety in personality and style, experience, knowledge, unfortunately, even integrity. And you'll find that out, I think, when you start interviewing brokers. So thanks. Yep, John Barbaro, you want to get
just I mean, just to everything that you've all said is 100% correct, and I think that there is a knowledge base with the brokers, with David Walters, that I've found. I mean, I worked as a service manager. I've worked as a tech support person. I've worked as a skipper on a variety of boats, and I would say that the brokers with David Walters have such a breadth of knowledge, so that if there was something that we didn't know, I think that by tag teaming with our colleagues, I think we can get any question answered. I think we just have a pool of a knowledge base that you're not going to find just anywhere.
Yep. Well said, guys. Yeah, well said for everybody here. Before we kind of wrap things up, I do want to throw it out. Does anybody have any questions? Actually, I see a real good question that just popped up here, and this is, I think, this is a really important one to highlight. So thank you. The question here is, if you are looking to sell and to buy, would you recommend trying to use the same broker? So and to summarize the question, you're selling your boat. After the boat sells, you want to buy another boat. So I think, you know, in general, that is the process of selling and then buying another boat. We would view, in some sense, in part of the same consecutive storyline. I mean, the sale of one boat is related to the purchase of the next. You know, very few people out there want to get into the two-boat ownership category, and I know there's a few of you on there because I recognize you. You can't approach the sale of one boat without considering the purchase of your next. And I think, from my perspective, absolutely. If you're going to sell a boat with a broker, it means you've already developed that relationship and that trust, and they know your knowledge. And I think in a lot of ways, they know you personally. And I think, especially on the buying side, you as a broker, you have to understand the individual and what their dreams, their intent, their expectations, their reality, their financial picture. You need to have a holistic view to help somebody get into the right boat. And I think you will develop that in a lot of ways when you're helping somebody to sell a boat. So yeah, absolutely. I would say if you're going to look at buying another boat, it'd behoove you to work with the same broker that helped you sell yours. Because I'll tell you, in a lot of ways, I mean, I've got folks I've helped buy and sell 5 different boats for. So, and I think everybody on this call does. So if you're a lifelong boater, you'll develop a relationship with a broker and it'll carry around for more than just a boat or two. So you guys want to jump in on that?
Agree with you. You know,
All right.
the relationship that you build in selling a boat with a client and understanding why that boat is being sold assists you in ascertaining the attributes of the next boat that's appropriate for them.
Yeah.
If it wasn't a relationship, it would just only be business, and then it wouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Bernie, that's a good point, because you've been at it a long time. We all have. When people ask me, what do I most enjoy about this profession? Frankly, some of the strongest relationships as friendships that I have today are people that started as clients.
How true that is.
My life and my wife's life has been so enriched from being in this industry as long as we have. You know, a number of years ago, Janine and I and another couple sailed Croatia. And as we were sailing in Croatia, we said, you know, damn, Jim and Jess would like that. And you know, Mike and Val would love it, and Pip and Jill. And so we got back and we put an email out and said, all right, guys, we're sailing Croatia in 2 years. Here are the dates that we're going to be sailing. If you're interested in joining on your own boat, you know, boat that you charter, sign up. And we figured, yeah, 2 or 3 people will sign up. So we sent it out to 30 people. We had 26 people show up in Croatia.
Wow.
You know,
Beautiful.
I mean, it's those relationships. That's the richness of this industry, in my opinion. I like the money. The richness are the relationships.
Yeah. Exactly right. In fact, I just kind of did a little bit of a browse through on our attendees list, and I see about 5 names in there that I know showed up to our customer party this past fall. So
that's good.
So if you showed up to our customer party, you know the way that we approach things is beyond just simply business. There's a definite personal side to it. So I think that's a good note to leave things on. I'm going to ask anybody here, are there any other questions from those that are on board here? All right. Well, again, my name's Josh, President Dave Walters Yachts. Bernie, John, and John, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to just have to go around real quick. I'm going to give you my number, my cell number, and my email address, and I'll have each of you guys do the same. So my phone number, my cell is 616-204-9658. And my email address is josh@davidwaltersyachts.com. I'll pass it off to Bernie. You want to share your contact info as well? And I'm going to put this in the comment section as well.
Okay, this is Bernie Jackets. You can reach me at bernie@davidwaltersyachts.com. And you can call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime you want, at 443-742-1792. I look forward to speaking with you and guiding you and just enjoying your friendship. Thank you.
And John Cuny, you want to share your contact info?
Sure. Yeah, my email's a little bit different than everybody else's because there are too many Johns. It's the initial JKUONY@davidwaltersyachts.com. And my phone number is area code 925-980-2863. I thank you all for joining us. Hope you found this informative, and please let us know if there's anything we can do to assist you. Most importantly, stay safe.
And sane.
Yep. John Barbaro, you want to share yours there?
Sure. It's John. So my email is j.barbaro. That's spelled BARBARO davidwaltersyachts.com. My phone number is 443-370-9962. And I want to thank you for your time, and stay safe and stay healthy.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to my team members here and for all you guys tuning in. I'm going to post this as well to our YouTube channel if you guys want to come back and review it later. So give us a call if there's anything we can help you for. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.